Okie doke. Now, this is relevant. Oh, perfect example has just gone past. Right, super quick. I don't like this angle. Okay, if the sound's no good, it still looks like it's wonky. That'll have to do. If the sound's no good, it's on this as well. Right. There's no reason for showing this other than I wonder what you'll do. Right. This is, I mean, I've put some bits and bobs up saying this is my will. And it is, particularly today. All that I actually care about deep down. But it crystallised today. The funny thing is, when I'm sat there, although this place, this region, I only think of regions. Gotta keep my eye on you. This region, it so exemplifies what 20 years ago I knew was, well, the best word is actually effete or acedia, but that's a little bit too far. Just the effete, but a dangerous kind of effeteness. Anyway, so my landloping, meandering, and I only have meandered down here. People have walked past and reminded me. Let's start it here. I hope they don't come in here. Right. The person for the last 3 years I spend the most time communicating with is somebody who I do not at all, is the person I value the least. I certainly wouldn't copy her in here. There's no danger, she's just lost. Brexiteer, drinks too much, and the saddest thing of all, inherited £500,000 4 or 5 years ago, and she stopped. Except she just becomes a problem for everybody, as even her 30-year best friend started to say a couple of years ago and has disconnected. This is somebody she actually moved to my past region kind of with. No, I speak to that woman occasionally, or was until until 6 months ago. No, according to her 30-year, actually longer than that, best friend. This particular lady has become unconscionable. What comes out of her mouth is just actually quite dangerous, because it's all a spun self-regard thing, and if you take notice and get sucked in a bit, or rather think, that's useful, as I did when I met her, a green initiative, very green. She was going to be, she wasn't going to be, she categorically was buying specifically 18 acres of land to found a better seed variety research institute. This is over 3 years ago. This is April 2020. Great! I shall I shall help. I shall facilitate. I can connect you with people in the area, women, who will take you seriously and help you get a good deal on this 18 acres, because she could get grants specifically at 18 acres. Turned out, over 9 months of me putting it was the main first project of April 2020. No, she was never going to do this. This was her messianically, and she'd actually researched it well and spoke of it well, messianically putting out that she's doing a project to make her look good. Full stop. A year later, I told her, I literally did spend several hundred hours, and more importantly, it was embarrassing because I contacted a few people, women, who I hadn't really spoken with much for 6 months, maybe a year, and said, I got somebody really dedicated who wants to do something, has got the money to do it. We should support her. I even took her to see in 2021 the best by far rewilding project in the region. So it's embarrassing when this lady turns out to be a total and utter, literal chimera. Right, but I talked to her still. She had a hissy fit for a few months when I did the big reckoning about a year ago. Maybe it was longer ago than that, and told her that. Anyway, here's the important thing. Yeah, we were chatting. She's not that wise, but we were chatting 4 or 5 days ago, and she quoted, I can't quite remember it, some Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff said something about people just speak to fill the space. They have nothing much to say. It was a bit more pointed and direct to that. Yeah, absolutely. These people walking past. I mean, when you're in places like this, in tourist places, visitor places, that's all people do. To speak, to fill the void. They actually don't say anything useful. Now, when I say a will, all I care about is that I'm going to actually specify, although everything, any journey through relations, even within families, is, do you know what I'm going to do? The only thing I care about is giving up smoking. I'm going to have a fag. I wrote about 2 weeks ago, there's one video I want to make, and this is it actually. I kind of wasn't ready. But anyway, yeah, so my kid has been probably polluted, mentally polluted by all sorts of, I can even put a name to this person. Mentally polluted, and I tried to get her away from this person. Now, he's not a composite, he's an exact person. Hello? What are we going to call you? I know what we're going to call you. I'm going to call you Bilbo. Because I met somebody this morning who had a dog called Bilbo Baggins. Right. Now don't jump off or anything like that, because I've decided... Oh, there's one of them there, Tom. I'm going to keep you for a few weeks. I don't think you were well. Bloody... Oh, forget it. Don't do it now. Right. Or I might have to do it part 2. Don't jump off. Yeah, I don't think you were well. You've got so much better the last few days. So. Right. Yeah, I don't normally. Right. So, all I care about is my daughter, who's been so warped. Oh, no, I don't know. Don't know what's happened to her, but I do know that there's a certain kind of, mainly man, but then the women that are around these people are the same. In fact, Tom took up with Kate. Exactly. Kate the woman, I'm in a children's chess club that I set up that was very well supported. Me and my daughter set up, and I heard her come one day, the skinny, this is in a town in the middle of the countryside, and there she is talking about New York. Jump. And of course Tom got involved with her, and this is in the middle of the countryside, accept. Right, let's stop waffling. I've survived them all. Oh, I was always going to survive them. But the harm that a society, that communities, these people can't do community. And this is a terribly good example around here, but there are plenty of places around here, to families not supporting each other in a straightforward, homespun, old school way. Is just a wasteland. And I'm using, of course, the word figurative, but it's the perfect word. It's a wasteland. And then we have these 2 or 3 other words that people take to far too much: dystopia, apocalypse. No, that's too dramatic a language, because what we're just talking about is a situation that, an old school situation, we knew, even bigoted, racially, religiously divided communities 100 years ago. I'm quite sure they knew that you had to nevertheless have healthy psychological assistance for families and children who are in a bit of a mess. Of course, there's loads of cruel pockets of weirdos, but anyway, let's keep to the point. Yeah, I've survived terrible stuff. That's all that matters. That's my will. I've more than survived. Anyway, so yeah, I'm sitting here. Now I'm here only for one reason, which is I've encountered only one good mind in this country for 25 years. Jesus Christ, you're beautiful. You're as beautiful as her. And now she's not British, and I suspect actually the Toms have polluted her, which I'll come to in a minute. And this is not about her, so be it. Now, I can't not be honest. If she walked through that gate now, I would show her my... Well, I took a photograph of a letter I wrote yesterday and sent, which I suppose is going to be delivered today. 10 days ago I met an Englishwoman. Extraordinary. I've never met anybody like her. Totally at peace, but much more important. Much more important. This isn't about women. Much more important. She was wonderfully direct and gently sceptical. She had what I don't have. She had a totally gentle performance. Her, and the hedgehog's here for a reason, by the way. She had an extremely gentle delivery, but in actual fact she was genuinely angry about things like the she has worked a decade or more for the NHS frontline, refused to take the vaccine. And she asked me, no, this is not about anything like that. I thought I'll write out the question she asked me, but we weren't talking about that. We were much more talking about her whole, the industrial machine that she works for. Doesn't tell people to walk, get out in the UV, and I put a right on one thing, the Paul Martin book, Your Spirit Also Matters. And the spirit is not something you can get from the yoga class. I think it's time. I wonder. It's actually comes from sticking up, if necessary, sort of fighting against cant, vanity, and those kinds of things. Bourgeois, pernicious bourgeois prejudice. Even here, if you don't have quite the right kind of look and boat that just fits in with the Toms, I'm quite sure there is prejudice. Right, we will get to the Toms now. I knew 20 years ago, now I lived 3 or 4 miles from the little town of Hay-on-Wye, where quite a few ex-London-ish, but their parents may have somewhere in the countryside. There weren't many actually, there's only a few. Really kind of, well, they considered themselves erudite. Mainly men in their 20s. You didn't have many men in their 20s come to the countryside. But the Toms have done their few years in LA. They've certainly done their quite a few years on strong mind-altering drugs. And they're interestingly, not to me, but interestingly fucked up in their 20s and 30s. Their lives are part car crash. They mess it up with their partners and kids in a way that's over the line. Oh, they get away with it usually. Now, 20 years ago, I had to get away from the Toms. Well, I already knew 5 years beforehand. I had a deal with the mother of my daughter that she'll get her British passport, spend a year here, but the mother of my daughter was European, and we'd spent a lot of time in Europe because I had a kind of very small, I used to try and look for rare old books in Europe. It would never have amounted to a full living, but it was a little string to my bow that I would have probably continued a little bit more. Anyway, that was the deal. Get out 25 years ago because of the Toms. Now, so yes, the Toms. And I figured this place. They've colonised places like this. Now, so I say, oh, well, I've just discovered something. Hedgehogs can bite you fucking hard. You little... Right. Yes, I agree. The hedgehog's here for a reason. This is a very, very symbolic... Oh no, there's one of them. There's the new kind of Toms. They've all got beards now, and they've got interesting, but not flashy bicycles, just funky. And anyway. And they really did have the worst kind of girlfriends, lovers. Bizarrely, the first Tom, he had a very, very down-to-earth, old-school, homespun, pretty ordinary partner. He'd had children very early with her. She was older than him, that's right. But of course, that didn't last, and the children got screwed up. But she was all right. She guided it reasonably softly forward. Anyway, here's the point. So the Toms, and that Tom inherited money. Oh, he never kind of really admitted it, but a couple of $100,000 from parents who, of course, had a London place, but had brought him up there in that area. This all started about 30 years ago, this kind of move. But that Tom, although he lived in the middle of the countryside, had a record shop in the local town, but that was just him playing, and it got him kudos. All self-regard. Had no knowledge of the countryside. Now this animal is here for two reasons. Firstly, I really don't know what to do with it. Should it be let out yet? But when it came to me, I've got to check this camera's still working. When it came to me 9 days ago, it didn't seem brilliant. It's got a lot fitter. I think we know you're fit now. But it didn't seem overly nervous of people. So there's a huge problem here. The problem is, has this been a pet? If it has, and it's put up in some wonderful woodlands up there, will it be able to look after itself? I don't know. Judgment of Solomon. So should it be given a couple more weeks, semi-hospital, looking after it? Or should it be let out? I don't know. If it hasn't learned fully to forage when young, it may die. Okay, it's just another hedgehog. The best science of all ever, and at last, a few days ago, I saw, it was a week ago, I found a video how the Dawkins approach to evolutionary biology is essentially wrong, as I've always known. But, perfect example. There was a meta-study that came out, it was about 10 years ago, and I can't bloody find it because it was called, I'm pretty sure loosely, The Hedgehog and the Fox. But it's so... If you look up Institute Art and Ideas, the video entitled Dawkins was wrong or Dawkins is wrong, within that, I've studied this all for 30 years. It's interesting, but it's not interesting. Within that is said, well, for 25 years we've wasted hundreds of billions of pounds on the model of science and medicine that if we genetically sequence everything, we will find many, many, many new clever, smart drugs and cures for all sorts of things. And that was always a dead end, essentially. That's what has come out, because that's not how the body works. I mean, the best example of all is that if they loosely say, a top scientist, I mean, that there is something that, let's say that, okay, that is 80% caused, they will use this phrase, and it's within the video, by a gene, or it's usually just a few genes, there's more than one gene. If that is an expression, is the correct term, of a few genes, that if you have those genes, or those genes are turned on, or maybe even a variant of them, they will say that that is 80% as a result of that or those genes expressing themselves. And they will look at the syndrome, and they will look at other genes and say, that gene there has zero effect on that. Zero. It does not cause it or repair it. However, this is where the magic is. If you knock out, if you remove, if you engineer out of rats, of course, or some other beast, the genes that do a large amount of creating that, they can actually tell that other genes that they've already established have nothing to do with that. And that's where the science is. That's what genetic sequencing is. Those genes, the 0% expression genes, we know they're nothing to do with that. We know they're nothing to do with that. Yet remove or neutralize the genes that we know have a lot to do with that. Guess what? The genes that that cannot have anything to do with it start to have something to do with it. In other words, there's higher level things going on that we don't yet understand, and that's why essentially Dawkins was wrong. Now, Dawkins is your perfect example of a fox. The fox is a beautiful, svelte, superb machine of the ultimate in existence. But as we know, in the race, the hedgehog, the bumbling, funny old hedgehog, won out. And that's what a great big meta-study showed of all sorts of science and some politics and media, that the person delivering the paper, the discovery, the politics, if they are smooth operators, super attractive, fabulous, svelte creatures, and Richard Dawkins is the personification of this, or certainly was 30 years ago, although he plays the slight, fop-haired, slightly humble public school boy. Absolutely not. He married a world-famous actress, for God's sake. The fox, if you check the science over the following decades, the science that the fox has put forth into the world turns out to be far less likely to stand up to decades of further research than the science the hedgehog puts out. And that's exactly the same when it comes to understanding psychology, mind and body, everything. Politics. And don't blame me, because actually that really hurts. Say hello to your camera, okay? The hedgehog, the bumbling, daddy-biting hedgehog, turns out to be, on average, a lot more robust in the science, policy, statements delivered unto humanity. So, back to the Toms, because that was my big thought this morning. The problem with this bloody place, when I park up there, I get into great thinking and essaying mode. Yeah, the Toms, and they totally, I can see them 100 yards away. They took over around here entirely decades ago, and they are so, because they have the perfect, they perform the most perfect, it's a sort of edgy Hugh Grant thing, or no, it's Johnny Depp, there you go, yeah. They are literally, they've styled themselves on Johnny Depp, literally. And of course they all have read their bit of Hunter S. Thompson. I've read all of Hunter S. Thompson. 10% of what Hunter S. Thompson writes is great. 90% is mad, drug-fueled, just garbage, selfish, not in any way utilitarian. In other words, people can't live as Hunter S. Thompson was a proponent of. It's great it sort of makes you think, but sorry, 90% of it is garbage. Anyway, yes. So they style themselves on Johnny Depp, Hunter S. Thompson, and they're the English version, of course, who's far superior. Doesn't really have the public school accent. They've put that aside. And anyway, they may have only gone to public school for private school. If you're American, they may have only gone to private school for 3 or 4 years, got expelled. But they're not antagonistic people. That's their act. But deep down, oh, they are so avaricious about anybody. I mean, this is what I would discover with Tom. If I was having a bit of a debate over a half of beer with Tom 25 years ago, as soon as you cross into, as I've just said, that kind of science, I'm sorry, it's a lot more complicated. Dawkins, who became the fucking darling of Hay Festival, I mean, they are more responsible for elevate, and it matters because social policy gradually has crept that way. Oh, you cannot say this, but the people at the bottom, they're always going to be at the bottom. They're going to need help, and they're going to need vulnerability stickers. That's essentially coming from a Dawkins version that came out in 1976 as Maggie Thatcher rose to, I think she was Prime Minister that year. The two things are not, it's not an accident. Anyway, but all I care about is the Toms, because the Toms polluted this woman I know. who was the only good mind I've bloody well come across at the kind of intellectualish level. The other woman, she might call me now. We spent 7 hours talking, and she said, "Oh, but you're one of those intellectual smart types, you won't like me as a person." And I tried to tell her the exact opposite, and the exact opposite is the truth. No, I was so impressed with her gentle, but she meant her skepticism. The Toms. Yeah, if you were to try and start it, if I'd have said the following, which I'm sure I did. Yeah, I've read Dawkins's books, I'd read all of them. But I've read Stephen Jay Gould, Richard Lewontin, Caymin, Rose, Mary Midgley, who most of them suggest it's probably more complicated and more hedgehoggy. They're more hedgehog, all of them, much more hedgehoggy. Look at a video of Stephen Jay Gould. You know, I've seen him speak. He's lovely, he's fluffy, cuddly and hedgehoggy, but not spiky. No, he's bumbling. He's not a brilliant speaker. He wasn't. He died, unfortunately. If I just sat there and saying to the Toms, yeah, but I've read Jay Gould, and it's almost impossible to say why, but there's something too prescriptive, binary, and in fact arrogant about. If you bite me, I will. If you bite me now, maybe this video can go viral and I'll get enough money to feed you. It's time to turn this off. Yeah, but the Toms. Now, I would also say, this is true. I've travelled to many different places, although the best mindfulness, the best thing for your soul is being made to stay somewhere. I had to for a kid who unfortunately I couldn't get away from a Tom and Kate. I could give Kate's surname, but no. A Tom and Kate inhabited region. And Kate, a few years later, she steals the sort of husband of somebody who was important to me. But if you bite me, you've got to draw blood, and then we'll get millions of pounds, and I can afford to buy a better boat. Oh, Jesus Christ. You are so fucking beautiful. Right. You've come back to life now, haven't you? You wouldn't umball before. Right, quickly. Yeah, the Toms, yeah. So if I were, yeah, they're spiking us. You know, even though they're the foxes, they support the foxes. They're spiking us. Yeah, no. We're slightly superior, but they're superior. If I didn't have a hedgehog in my hands, I'd go quotation marks. Okay, their superiority basically comes from the media. They've seen BBC, sort of some Channel 4 things that elevates the Dawkinses into sort of demigods, and that's, you know, they haven't read the books. I'd read all of them, and I'd just like, no. You're being given a sort of slightly showbiz version of science through Dawkins. Superb writer, but sorry. Whereas your other lot, much more bumbling, and they cannot find language, glorious language, for what they were trying to say, because it's unknown. There is an element of the ineffable in what the other lot, who are the hedgehogs, and turned out to be right, were saying. Yep. Anyway, and it's all actually from crap parenting. Tom, of course, had slightly aristocrat parents who wouldn't in any way admit to that, but it sort of brought up in Highgate, places like that, where your parents are far too busy actually doing other things to parent you properly. My daughter, she's just got top MA, but we spent hundreds of hours of our life looking after hedgehogs and dozens of other animals. Oh, you are getting very busy at last. That's proper parenting. So actually, they're hurt, they're damaged, and that comes out in their drugs. And then the worst thing of all is that when your sort of Sam Harris generation come along, and David fucking Fuller, oh no, you're going to be cured by psychedelics. I'm sorry, the psychedelics clearly did a lot of damage to the Toms. Although, well, no, they took them quite a lot. Right, is that it? Yeah, so I do kind of travelogue sometimes here and there. This is not a travelogue, other than this region, and I knew it was like this. I didn't have it crystallized in my mind exactly what the problem was, and I'm quite surprised. All the Toms, and well, they're often called Camilla. That Tom did have a girlfriend called Camilla, and the Kates, and they will all, in fact, quite a few of them will even be sort of slight supporters of people like Corbyn. I know they're performative entirely, but when you put philosophy, real philosophy, into their own lives, straight away, they get vicious and bite like this hairy little fucker, spiky fucker. You are the most absurdly. Now, I want to give this to somebody who I think is honest when she says that she spends time sort of being auntie to a 9 or 10-year-old kid. But she probably won't talk to me. Anyway, yes, the Toms, that's the reason I put this on, because it's like, that is what I had to say, that is what I know is the issue down here. And these people have totally polluted and they have. Because she has to make a living from them. Because they've got the money. Oh, they will have the most battered old houseboat for effect. Well, the Portuguese say for the English to see. And there are two versions of that, of course, which Central Europeans could never understand. And I had this problem in my life 25 years ago. That the richest people, or those with the kind of Tom heritage, and of course they'll have a semi-famous poet or scientist or writer a generation or two back, they're all the same. Okay? The richest people actually often have the most dilapidated looking houseboats and that kind of thing. It's totally with nail. Oh, that's a shitty film. Stupid. And I knew Bruce pretty well by accident. Yeah, and she makes a living from them, so she's so intelligent. I bet you she can't quite put it as I've put it, but she makes a living from them, so deep down she can't share the things that she shared with me about how awfully our children are parented in this society, and how the Camillas and Kates, now they've reached 50, they spend their lives going to absurd fucking workshops, and it's also superior, it's also, but they're empty, they're vapid. That's not a nice word, but I've had a lot to do with them in my work as environmental, trying to attract them, because of course they have the money. Big drive to try and attract a few in 2020 who came to my region. Nope, they're vapid. They perform interest and smiles at you. They go home, 10 minutes after the conversation, it's, oh no, I can't actually have anything to do with that person. That person kind of talks the truth about society. That's what the Toms and the Camillas, and it's the Toms too, that's what they are. And it didn't really occur to me, but they particularly colonised this county of Britain. Go to Falmouth, and it's just so goddamn obvious, it's ridiculous. Anyway, there we go.